it may pay to briefly stop and think about the thinking skills. And I'd like to put up this little pyramid here, which is due to Benjamin Bloom, an American psychologist, who ordered these thinking skills from lower order at the bottom to higher order at the top. My claim is that a real problem tests all the way up to the top of this pyramid, whereas most inauthentic problems test at the bottom. Let me give you a little example. Years ago, I was painting my living room on a Saturday morning, and I ran out of paint. I hopped into my car and drove to Harvard Square to buy some paint. You may know this hotel, I forgot, its name keeps changing. It was the Harvard Motor Lodge. I don't know what it is now. It has this parking lot underneath with 20 spots on one side, 20 on the other side. Until that morning, I had the practice of pulling in on one side. If there was no space empty, I'd pull out back into front of the Charles and then back in again, and then turn around and go and go and go until somebody freed up a spot. That Saturday morning, for a reason that I don't know, I decided to stay put, give up on the other 20 spots. And as I turned off the engine and waited, I thought, how long am I going to have to wait? And I thought to myself, can I estimate how long I have to wait? And I thought about it for a few minutes and came up with the answer, 3 minutes. And looked at my watch, and sure enough, 3 minutes later, somebody came up and freed up a spot. I felt so good. Now imagine we turn this into an exam problem. On a Saturday afternoon, you pull into a parking lot with unmetered spaces near a shopping area. You circle around, but there are no empty spots. You decide to wait at one end of the lot where you can see and command about 20 spaces. How long do you have to wait before somebody frees up a space? I think your students will go to the dean to complain. Because what does it require to answer this question? It requires making assumptions. It requires developing a model. It requires then applying that model to come up with an answer. So if we look at this pyramid that I showed before, it really requires skills all the way from the bottom to the top of the pyramid. Which of the things, of the requirements that are on there, do the students hate the most? Making assumptions. Why? Because you lose solid ground under the feet. So given that assumptions are the most terrifying to students on an exam, and I don't blame them, I'll get back to why that is, even though, let's face it, the ability to make correct assumptions is probably one of the most useful skills, no matter what type of job our students are eventually going to take. And the reason we're terrified about it is because of the uncertainty and because of the fact that we never get to train those muscles that help us make assumptions. So let's make the assumption. Just add one sentence. On average, people shop for 2 hours. 2 minutes is too short, 2 days is too long, so 2 hours is probably the right ballpark figure. You've maybe nibbled a little bit at the top of the pyramid, but it still is a pretty difficult problem because it requires students to develop a model that they've not seen before. It would be unfair. You know, I can't resist to tell you a little other anecdote. I'm going to get carried away with anecdotes here. But a few years ago, I was giving a talk at a university south of here in Connecticut. I won't name any names. And in the physics department about teaching. And after my talk, one of the faculty members came to me and he said, I've had something really strange happen in my course this year. He wanted to put he taught physics to engineers, and he wanted to put it into a real-world context. And in order to put it in a real-world context, he used baseball. I mean, there's a lot of physics in baseball, right? Trajectories of balls, collisions between balls and bats, runners running, you name it. So in class, he'd use examples from baseball. On the homework, he would put baseball problems. On the midterm examination, he'd put baseball problems. At the end of the year, he was preparing the final exam, and he realized he'd run out of baseball problems. So he put some football problems on the exam. Professor, complained the students, we have never done any football problems. You're laughing about it, but I think we should really be crying about it. Because, let's face it, unless you can transfer what you've learned in one context to another context, you have not really learned.